Formula One is back. Man, how nice does it feel to actually be saying those words, because it's been 4 long weeks of an enforced break of sorts thanks to the cancellation of the Chinese Grand Prix for the 2nd straight year running. Unfortunately, that meant that there was a 4-week gap. The good news is F1 will be returning with the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with not only plenty of excitement but also a new format throughout the weekend. It's going to be the first sprint race of the year, and this time around the sprint, rather than setting the grid for Sunday's race, will in fact be a standalone event, and that means plenty of changes to the weekend format as we know it. But what are those changes? How will they impact the race? And what exactly is the reasoning behind them actually doing this? That's what we're going to be talking about in this here video. So without further ado, let's just get straight to it. First off, the major changes are, of course, first that the sprint race this time around will be a standalone event. Previously, what used to happen is that you'd have qualifying on Friday, then the sprint race on Saturday, which would set the grid for the Sunday race. This time around, the sprint race is an individual standalone event of its own. It will have its own relevance because the top 8 drivers from 1 to 8 will actually be getting points from 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in opposite order of where it is they finish. It will not determine the Sunday grid. That part is key because normally it was used as a qualifying device, but this time it's going to be a standalone event. But for it to be a standalone event, there will be some changes to the usual weekend format. Now, what's the weekend format that we're all familiar with? Is that you'll have 2 practice sessions on Friday, and then you'll have a 3rd practice session on Saturday before race qualifying, and then come Sunday you have the main event, which is of course race day. This time around though, there's going to be a few changes to the format, so let's check in with what those changes are. First, it's on Friday. Friday you're only going to have the 1 free practice session. And what's more is, not only will you only have 1 free practice session on Friday, that 1 free practice session on Friday will be the only practice session throughout the weekend. That's right, there's going to be no free practice 2 or 3 because of course the sprint is going to come in the way. So there's free practice 1, and then there'll be Friday qualifying, and Friday qualifying will not set the grid for Saturday's race, but it will set the grid for the race on Sunday. So qualifying or traditional qualifying, rather than happening on Saturday, is happening this time on Friday. But then I hear you ask, what about the sprint race? Well, we're getting there. Saturday is going to see 2 portions of the sprint. There'll be the sprint shootout and the sprint race. Now, what's the shootout? The shootout is a shortened qualifying session that will in fact determine the grid for the sprint race. So you'll have Q1, Q2, Q3 as you usually do, but rather than it being the lengths it'll be shortened. So each of the sessions will be shortened, and the 1st and 2nd sessions you'll only be allowed to use medium tires with soft tires preserved for the final session, which is Q3 if you make it that far. That sprint shootout, the grid that is determined, that is the order at which they'll race the sprint race. The sprint race, therefore, so the sprint basically takes up the entirety of Saturday. So that way, there's no wasted motions as such. You have 1 free practice on Friday and then qualifying, then sprint shootout, sprint race on Saturday. This though has no effect on the race itself, because on Sunday, all you're going to be having is in fact the sprint, rather the normal race. That is because the grid for that will have been set by Friday qualifying. The reason this is happening is because let's say F1's owners have this desire to have actually make sure that every weekend has something meaningful for fans as a whole. They have to have every single session mean something. That is why the sprint is going to be a standalone event rather than it being something to determine the race grid. Of course, whether or not that works out in the long run, something that remains to be seen, but I can't help but be excited at the idea of it. Of course, that's just how I feel. How you feel about it, you can let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, share with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap the bell icon and leave us a comment. Then you can also go ahead and follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and don't forget to download the AajTak app as well. Plus, if you're already on the website, go ahead, check out a few other videos that we've done. For now, from my side, goodbye.